everyone, it's Lynn. Today I want to talk about rituals, everyday rituals to be specific, I guess you could say. Like for us witches, I feel like I can only go off my own thing here, but I feel like rituals, I hold a very special place in my heart for rituals because that is where I feel like I'm doing the most work in terms of my craft, is when like those grandiose rituals come about, like they're perfectly planned and they're perfectly executed and I've got all the right tools and things, and I feel very witchy in those moments of the grandiose rituals. Now in terms of witchcraft, there are lots of rituals, say casting circles, calling in the elements, working with deity, certain spell work that has a ritualized, like a ritual that surrounds the spell. That happens to me a lot as well. There can be certain things that I do in terms of my craft that are ritual centric. There are, like I said, there's lots and lots of rituals that we may do as witches, but then there are some rituals, like for me, that are considered like everyday magic that I never really think about being rituals. Damn camera is like crazy. Here we go. A little bit closer, Tim. Come a little bit closer. And today I wanted to talk about the everyday rituals that I think what I've been doing is kind of thinking about them lately, thinking about rituals and thinking about how 2020 and then leading up to where we are now, they kind of took a back burner, you know? Some witches have seen the opposite effect. I know that some have been more into their craft because they've been at home more and things like that. As someone who barely leaves the house, even before the pandemic hit, just by design, because I don't have a car and I live rural, so it's not like I can walk to the store from here, things like that. So there's dependency there. So as someone who doesn't leave the house, that's never been a problem for me. I know that in terms of like my mentality and where my emotions have been, where my empathy has been for others, I don't know, my craft took a hit last year. Not that it did anything long lasting, but I started to have things in my practice that were considered everyday magic that would make me feel giddy, as Kellyanne would say, make me fizzy. And I learned that there were a lot. I also learned that home magic, which is most of my craft, because I'm here, there were things that I would do around my house that would make me feel giddy. Like coffee in the morning. That's like my biggest example, okay? As the only one in my house that drinks coffee, that's very much just for me, right? Coffee makes me giddy, folks. It just does. At night, when it's really late and the day starts getting to me, I think about how I'm gonna feel the next morning drinking that cup of coffee. I know it sounds crazy, but I do think about that. Almost every day, I think, if I can just get it to the morning, I can have my coffee again. Oh, that sounds pathetic, doesn't it? But it works with me, thinking about that cup of coffee. But what's important about that cup of coffee in the morning is if you take your coffee in another way but black, okay? You add cream sugar to it, right? That's how I take it. So because I add that, the first cup you have to make absolutely perfect, exactly how you want it. The right amount of cream, the right amount of sugar. Every cup after that, there may be some residual milk, some residual sugar involved. So you just kind of have to finagle it, and if it's not perfect, you just go on with it. You're like, okay, I don't want to deal with it, and then move on. For the second plus cups. But for me, that first cup very much holds something magical in it for me, something perfect, because it's just for me and I have made it exactly how I want it, and that makes me giddy as fuck. That first cup of coffee. And it's something I do every day. It's something that I think about too. It's something that makes me giddy. It may not be magic related, but it's a form of magic for myself. It's a form of self-care, which is very much part of my practice. It's a part of my self-care that I'm finding what holds the magic in me in the mundane. And I think there's magic in the mundane. Coffee mugs, same kind of concept. There's a reason, okay, I'm not saying there's a hidden message in everything we do, okay? But sometimes there's a reason I pick a specific mug. I've got a whole cabinet full of really, really good mugs that I bought or were gifted to me or things like that, that hold some kind of meaning, or it makes me think of the person that gifted it to me. I have a Golden Girls mug that very much makes me think of my grandmother because we used to watch that show together. And on the days where I'm really, really thinking about her, I pull that mug out. And I may not even be conscious of it at the time. But then, throughout the day, and I look at the mug and I'm like, I have really been thinking about her lately. Maybe my brain allowed me to pick that cup up, So I think that in those instances, it's good to plug into the moment and see what you do on an everyday basis. And I like to recognize the things that I do that are utterly linen. Oh, I know that sounds crazy too. My camera keeps sliding. Oh, I know that sounds crazy too. But there's things that I do that are like my quirks, right? That are, oh, that was so linen, Like the way in which I conduct my baths. They may not be ritualized baths, because I have those too, where there's a process, right? There's a lighting of the candles, getting the water temperature just right, adding the essential oils, adding the Epsom salt, adding the flower petals if I have some at that moment in time, and then placing the candles around said bath and then having the bath, right? There's a process. And whether or not those baths are ritual, like there's an actual magical reason for the bath, there's still a process in which I conduct said bath or shower. There's a way in which I shampoo first and then shave my legs and then condition my hair and then wash my body. And it's like, there's a process, that's utterly me. And then that gets me on thinking about how I was taught to do those things, right? Who taught me how to shave my legs? Who taught me how to make coffee? I happen to like my coffee just like my dad because he taught me how to make a cup of coffee, right? So there was magic in that as well, like an ancestor type of a magic, a parental guidance type of magic that I hold reverence for. And that's all rituals are. It's a way in which we hold reverence. And if we only talk about the extravagant things that we do in our practice, that yes, may be great, and we hold a special place in our hearts for working with the moons and working with our deities and things like that, and in working with our tools, right? And it makes us feel very witchy and things like that. There's still a ground surface level thing that we do as an individual. And I think that, fishing for certain things in our life that make us feel incredibly individual is a way to plug into our uniqueness as people, which in turn could make us feel giddy, which is a form of self-love, which links us more to being in our own power and being in our own witchiness. I say this a lot. It's about know thyself. And if we don't know the things in our mundane life that makes us feel so giddy and happy or content even, it doesn't have to be all the way to happy, all the way to joy. I know that baking is like one of those high love of mine. Art is another high love of mine. There may or may not be times where I do those things that I could bake and it could be for a Sabbath, right? Or a solstice. And there's very much some, underlying witchcraft going on. But then just everyday baking, like cookies for no reason or cupcakes for no reason or whatever. That still makes me feel giddy. It's still very much a linen thing to do, that when I lock into those rituals, because I'm calling them rituals, those mundane rituals, it links me more to myself as a person. And then as I do more things in the mundane, I figure out what I do and don't like. So therefore, when I do those more grandiose rituals in terms of my craft, it's almost like the light that we visualize in ritual is brighter at those moments, because it's like, this week I found out I really don't like to cook chicken. I just hate it. It's just slimy and I don't like to cut it. I don't like the feel of that when I'm slicing through it. I don't like it, right? It's like the light inside you grows brighter because you've found something out about yourself. There's things about myself that I've known how to do since like I could hold things like hot glue. I've known how to hot glue since I was 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And I've been doing it my whole life, right? It makes me giddy. So I think about some memories and I lock into the moment that is now and immerse myself in the activity. It may or may not have anything to do with my craft, but it still makes me giddy enough to remember and to hold that happiness, hold those happy memories, hold the activity that is now, that will become a memory, a happy memory in the future. It's just, I think it blossoms us out as people to remember the mundane. And I don't necessarily think that rituals have to be, I guess, just for your craft. You could rope mundane things into your craft, sure. I think that there is a magic in you. And whether or not you choose to perform that magic that revolves around the things that you love to do, once you learn about those things, like once I knew that art made me giddy, I did start using that more and more in terms of my craft, right? I would say, you know what, this dream or this talk that I had with this deity in my imagination very much feels like I need to paint it. I need to get it out of my head that way instead of a journal or whatever. And I plug in and I use my craft and I link the two. So I think finding out more about yourself and what makes you giddy, you can plug in those mundane things and light a candle or journal or do your art or bake something for your craft. And it's linking those two. Otherwise, how are we going to continue to stay giddy? Especially now with people staying at home more, people not going out as much in the pandemic. That is teaching us that is teaching us how to be with ourselves, how to be more with the silence, because we don't have the busy street, right, that we're running on, or we don't have the movie theaters, and we don't have certain restaurants, things like that. So it's a way there's a way in which the pandemic has forced us to get back in touch with self. And if we don't utilize that, then we're not really benefiting ourselves. So I think that by sitting at home and having everyday magic and trying new things out to learn more about ourselves is actually going to benefit our practice in the long run. So as a homebody anyway, there's certain things that I like to do every day that make me giddy. I know that music is a high love of mine. In terms of rituals, it could be music. It could be journaling. It could be baking. It could be art. It could be reading. There's certain things I do with books like bibliomancy. I do some scrying with, lighting candles. There's something that I do with my wax burners that I wanted to share too, in terms of candles, because we can light candles and there may not even be a reason that we're lighting these candles. We're just lighting them to have ambiance in the room, no like real magic reason. But I learned that I have these wax burners. There's actually one right here, but it's lit, so the wax is gonna be like I don't even know if you'll be able to see. There's a little bit of wet wax right here. I mean, it's nasty because I get wax moving it around and everything. I end up getting wax everywhere on it. But there's a there's wax melts, I guess you could say strategically placed within my house. And some days I go around and I light certain ones. Some days I go around and light all of them. Some days I may only light them in the bedroom, right? Well, for the last couple of weeks, I've really been trying to think about what happened on those days when I would do only the certain ones. And I realized that, like, say I had an argument with my partner the night before, right? Just something, just some bad vibrations happening in the room, right? In the bedroom. And I only ended up lighting the candles and the incense in the bedroom the next day. Is that my brain's way of clearing out all that bad energy, or the negative energy, or whatever you want to call it? Is that my brain's way of just getting out the argument to recharge the room, so to speak, get the room back down to 0 or up to 0 since it was in the negative space, kind of a thing. And then if I did the living room, maybe I'm not feeling the layout of the living room. Maybe I can feel pockets of stagnant energy places, right? So moving the living room around is what needs to happen if I'm concentrating a lot on the living room. In terms of, like, I'm constantly wanting to sage it or light incense everywhere, light my candles and the smell out, It's like, do I need to do something with the energy of the room? So it's in those mundane things that I've been able to find out more that I need to do in terms of the home to get the energy to not be stagnant, right? So that's kind of how I think of it. That all I was doing was going around lighting tea lights in my wax burners or lighting some incense, and there may or may not have been a reason. Like, I need to clear that energy. That's spell work, baby. Spell work, clearing out the energy. When someone steps over the threshold and they're not really someone that's, not necessarily an argument, but it's someone that's not really on your side per se. And I go out there and I sweep the front porch. That's my brain's way of linking the two. Linking the fact that I do need to sweep that damn porch off, and the fact that I need to clear off the footsteps that came into this house the previous week, or however often I do it. Right? So there's a way, and I believe that there's a way in which we can link the two. And there's something in the mundane that will allow the parts of our brains, when we go to sacred space or when we open the circle, those things are going to be what pops out. The mundane things, right? It's hard to shut our brains down anyway with worries and guilt and shame and whatever that have been going on since the last time you went to circle. It's the mundane things usually, not the magical things. Usually when you come to circle, you're really not thinking about the last time you had a grandiose ritual. You're just thinking about the everyday things. So I try to plug in and see if I can link the two. And when I come to circle, yes, it's best to like blank out, but figure out how to use the mundane to your advantage, I guess you could say. Anyway, I'm rambling through this. So I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about everyday magic and how we can link the mundane to the grandiose, and we can make rituals out of a lot of things that we do. And it may or may not be, mundane doesn't have to be mundane. There can still be lots of magic to unpack there. So let me know down below what you think of this. What have been some of your, I guess, pandemic household rituals? Things that you do that may seem mundane, but you're using them to kind of revamp your magic as well. Revamp getting to know yourself and your power and things like that. Love to hear from you. And I hope to see everyone again. Much love.